I am headed to the FanDuel win totals for 2024, which I believe have just been released here in the last couple of days.
Oh, yes.
Miami's sitting at 9.5.
9 and a hook. Look, man, it goes 9.5 is the over under officially.
Yes.
I just wanted to translate that in case people didn't understand what I meant, so I just wanted to be clear. I knew that you knew, but sometimes we ask questions for the other people in class. But where? I know that I tweeted it, and I've been tweeting infrequently from State of the U.
While you're looking for that, here's the deal, folks. So 9.5 win total for 12 games. Some people ask about postseason games. Of course, these are not postseason games. We don't know who anyone's going to be playing in the postseason. These are regular season wins. So Miami, you can either believe that they're going to win 10 or more, which you would take the over, or 9 and under. Now, the payout for these particular plays gives you an indication of what Vegas, where they are heavily leaning. I posted a video over in the main channel today with all the Big Ten win totals. I'll get to the other conferences. So I started with the Big Ten, and all but Wisconsin. Wisconsin was the only one where there was basically even money on each side. There was a definite lean from Vegas on all the other win totals for everyone. So if you are not familiar with betting, folks, basically any NFL or college football regular season game, you're going to see if you are wagering against the spread, you're going to see basically even money on each side. You're going to see a figure that says minus 110. That means you need to bet $110 to win 100 if you are correct. That, if you do the math, the simple math is Vegas taking its 9 or 10%, regardless of what happens. So if they get 50% money on each side, they still take their 9 or 10%, continue to build really big, tall buildings. When it comes to this Miami play in particular, the over is plus 116, meaning if you bet $100, you will be paid out $116. So 216 gross, so you'll clear 116. But if you take the under, you have to bet $142. It's minus 142 just to make $100, meaning that they are very much encouraging the over. So while they are putting Miami at 9.5, they're leaning toward probably 9, but they didn't want to go to 9. Of course, they want to break the tie with most of these plays. So they want that hook or that half. So it's at 9.5.
And I mean, that's why when I was doing the over-unders for commitments during like a big visit weekend or something, always put it at a half. Or even if it was like, I know that there's one coming, so it's going to be 1.5. But like, yeah, including that half, there's no ties. You got to, whatever. Now, obviously, lines can move based upon betting movement, but we're not going to do a whole betting, primer show or anything. However, I was looking at the wrong account because I actually tweeted this from my Underwood Sports account. But yeah, so in the ACC, right, the win totals are Miami, Florida State, and Clemson at 9.5. Louisville, NC State, and North Carolina at 8.5. Everybody's 7.5 or under, right? I know that Florida doesn't have like a 9.5 win total like that. There's no possible way. And that's without looking, because no. So the only teams on the schedule this year with big win totals projections are Florida State at 9.5 and Louisville at 8.5. We miss Clemson, we miss NC State, we miss Carolina, and then you're down to Virginia Tech at 7.5. Like, and then like even if the out of conference teams had big over under numbers, I guarantee you they're not thinking that beating Miami is one of those numbers, right? So basically, again, you got 2 games against teams that really are thought of as having high-end potential. This just reinforces what we've said 3 of the 4 last weeks when we were talking about the schedule. It is tailor-made for 10 wins or more. The only thing that can stand in the way of that are the Miami Hurricanes themselves. I've said this for years. If we handle our business, if we do what we need to do, we will be all right. But if we don't turn the ball over a billion times and then whatever shenanigans at the end of the game against, Georgia Tech, like all that took into that, right? Most of those things were self-inflicted. It wasn't really things that they did to us. They just said, we're going to let them beat themselves, and we beat ourselves. Guys, 2 games against teams with 8.5 win totals or higher. That means they're thinking, and I don't know what the numbers are over and under for Louisville, right? But that means they're thinking Louisville 8-4 or 9-3 just by the number, and they're thinking Florida State 9-3 or 10-2. I think they're going to fall off because they went all in and bought that team for last year, which I'm not saying is oh my God, go get them. But clearly they went all in on they did so much to get and retain those guys and everything. I find it hard to believe that they would only take the small step back that they're being maybe thought of or projected to have. That's just me. I can be wrong, and have been before and will be again. But in this case with them, I don't necessarily see it. But I mean, yeah, that's two teams. Virginia Tech at 7-5. Everybody else is either there or who else is on the schedule? We miss SMU at 7.5. We go out to Cal. That's a 6.5 over under. So they're thinking 6-6, 7-5. You got to beat them. We miss Syracuse. Duke with Manny Diaz comes down here. They're 6.5 over under because they lost their quarterback, but they got Malik Murphy. So who knows? But that's not the only thing there. But that's a 6-6, 7-5 team. Georgia Tech, Wake Forest, Virginia, Boston College, 4.5. Guys, and I know once bitten, twice shy. I know, Cam, we've said this every damn year about I know we've not been wrong to say it. The team has just not had the level of performance. But guys, if you're looking at this schedule and say, last year, I removed the Georgia Tech game. You could look at that schedule last year and you could say, I can see 4 losses, right? You got A&M, Florida State, Clemson, NC State, Carolina. That's 5 teams right there. And you think, even if you beat 2, maybe you slip up on a random shenanigans because Miami always has the random shenanigans. You could see 4 losses on that schedule. You can't. Absent that 8 turnover game, absent the Tyler Van Dyke breakdown and officiating shenanigans about safety here against Clemson and safety here against Florida State not called and this, that, absent all of those ridiculous things, you cannot tell me that you look at the schedule and see 3 losses. I'm sorry. Now, if the team doesn't rise to that level of performance, that's on the coaches for development and deployment. But as we sit here with all the dudes and the talent on this roster, and you went and got the best returning quarterback in the country from 23 to be your quarterback for 24, guys, it don't get no righter. It don't. I don't know that there's going to be a year that is this tailor-made to walk to 10 wins or more. I don't know. I don't know. But I mean, again, I understand if you're sitting here listening to the sound of my voice and being I hear you, and all this makes sense in my head, but in my heart, it's been broken so many times, Cam. I'm not going to vote, or I'm not going to bet the over. I completely and totally understand. I get it 100%. But eventually, some guys are going to have to make positive program changing plays. And eventually, and I don't know, it needs to be this year, but eventually you're going to get there, right? And it took Michigan years. And they kept losing to O State, right? Which clearly in a 2-game schedule was the thing, right? Where they're making strides and they're getting there, but then they still can't get over the hump to get where they need to do. Eventually they did, right? They recruited that team, they developed it, but they had that process. I know that Mario Cristobal has this process, but not only do you have that process, you have a cakewalk schedule, guys. Louisville's a fine team. they're not Ohio State or Penn State level. Sorry. Florida State this next year, they're a good team, and I know that game always is different and but they're not that level. They're not. They won't be this year. I can guarantee you that. So, for me, my mind is definitely on the over. The schedule, cream puff. This schedule, and the difference between the team that I'm going to name and the Miami Hurricanes is the fact that the Miami Hurricanes haven't won anything recently. But this schedule is as soft this year for Miami as Georgia's was for Georgia last year. Now, obviously, Georgia, two-time defending champion, they're at peak optimization. Miami is growing towards that. But, like, you remember how everybody all last year was like, Georgia don't play nobody. They don't play nobody. They're going to blow everybody out. This is the easiest schedule I've ever seen for a championship contender. Miami is not as good as Georgia was, but this schedule is equally as light. So maybe you lose 2 because, like, there's that 2-game difference between where Georgia is and where Miami is. But, bro, this got to be a 10 or 11 win regular season. It just does.
I think people were saying that about Georgia primarily last year because they were scheduled to play Oklahoma non-conference, and because of the realignment, they had to drop that game. And so the non-conference became a complete 4-game walk in the park.
Right.
They still played Missouri, Ole Miss, 2 10-2 teams, Tennessee. Still played a few good teams.
So then, I mean, then you have the argument that this Miami Hurricane schedule is lighter even than that. Okay, sure. But then again, the Miami Hurricanes are not as good as Georgia. So I think that, the comparison in level of the team we're discussing and the schedule that they're facing is still similar in difference, even if, like, the raw number is different, if that makes sense. But the delta between who they are and who they're playing is similar. So, and again, like I said, even if it's a 2-game depression because, like, Miami's not as good as Georgia. Ooh, shocking. Okay, like, but, like, that means 10-2 should still be right there, guys.
And if I'm reading your correlation, Miami, Michigan, and getting over the hump, Miami getting over the hump is playing to expectations, contending for a conference title, let's say winning 9 or 10 ball games. For Michigan, during Lloyd Carr up against Jim Tressel, they were a top 10 or 15 team almost consistently throughout the 2000s. It was just that Ohio State was like a top 3 or 4 team all the time. Right. And then after Hoke and Rich Rod and Hoke, to go in order, Harbaugh brought them back to a 9-3 type status. But again, they weren't top 3 in the country. And then they elevated after 5 or 6 years under Harbaugh.
But that's what we talked about a couple of weeks ago, is that, Ryan Day, 54 wins in 5 years. It's not like all of a sudden there was a 7-5 in there, but Michigan bossed up and went and got them from the top of the list and then surpassed, and hopefully if Miami is to make a move, like, up in terms of performance, like, that would easily be, ACC championship game, 10-2, 11-1 regular season. Like, it's right there. So, and I think that the 9.5 number is the right number. And again, I get it. I completely understand if you're like, Cam, I'm not listening to a damn word you're talking to me about the over. Not a single one. No, shut up. It's the under until they prove it. No argument from me, kid. But I'm just saying, it has to be this year.
In addition to Miami being at 9.5 with Clemson and with Florida State, remember, folks, what I said about, of course, Vegas has to be committal to a number and they want it to be on the half, but you can get an indication of where they are leaning by the payout. The payouts on those 3 are almost identical. Clemson and Miami's are identical, and Florida State's is fractions away. So they are believing that those 3 teams are in the same position.
I mean, there's an argument to be made there, but of the 3, Miami has the easiest schedule, which to me puts them in the most advantageous situation. But we are 6 months and 17 days away from beginning to find out how things are going. P.S. By the way, halfway through the show, happy Valentine's Day, everybody. Hope that you guys are enjoying.